Pop Culture Pastor.
Cody, are you an Aquaman guy or a Submariner guy? Are you a Namor or a Namor for the recent MCU viewers?
Namor.
Or are you a Aquaman guy? They're both kind of a little lame, right?
They are lame. I'm Aquaman if it's Jason Momoa because he looks cool. Not that he necessarily is a great actor, but he looks really rough and rugged, and that made Aquaman 50 times cooler than Aquaman ever was. Otherwise, I might be a Mermaid Man from SpongeBob guy, so...
Aquaman is only cool, if Jason Momoa is playing him and he's nothing like the character from the comics, right?
Yeah.
Although they did kind of model him off of, there was that period of time where they tried to give him edge. They gave Aquaman some edge. They took away his orange, scaly outfit and his green trunks, his Speedos.
Oh, Aquaman.
And then, there's Namor, the Submariner. But why are we bringing this up at all?
That's a good question.
That's the question, because they're both in separate IPs, comic book companies, kings of Atlantis. And when Josh came on this episode of Expedition Unknown and immediately started in on sunken cities, I got excited. I was pretty pumped.
I'm all about looking for sunken cities, although I find it disappointing at times because everything's down deep in the ocean, and it's like, well, how are we going to actually view this and dig it up?
Yeah. Unlike Atlantis, which is mythical, may not have ever existed. Only reason it is in our consciousness is because, was it Plato that wrote about it?
I believe so.
And it became just, we were obsessed with it in our culture, and in our pop culture is obsessed with Atlantis, but we don't know that it was an actual place that ever existed. The underwater, now the city, the lost city we're looking for in this week's episode of Expedition Unknown actually apparently did exist. There's documentation. We'll get to all that. But first I have to tell you, you're listening to Pop Culture Pastor watch-alongs for Expedition Unknown Season 13, Episode 5.
It feels like Episode 6, but it really isn't.
There was a Shark Week special in there, which we have beat like a dead horse. But hot stuff, I was like, we're going to Atlantis. And then I'm like, oh, nope, we're not going to Atlantis. I thought he was going to go looking for Atlantis. I was like, man, we really turned the corner from that last week looking for that whatever plane.
The Barracuda.
Which, I was willing to go with last week, but this week it makes it seem like terrible. Like, yeah, all right, a real adventure. Let's go. But he quickly, he just kind of teases us with the Atlantis, and then we get into the real subject of the search, the adventure for this episode, which is Rhapta, or Rhapta? Rhapta. Southernmost outpost of the Roman Empire, a trading port on the east coast of Africa, allegedly. Maybe.
Theoretically.
So, you know what that means, Cody? The past is all around us. A world of mystery, danger, and very old coins. We travel the roughly 0.8 mile from our houses to the recording studio to podcast about Josh's travels to the far corners of the earth to find where legends end and history in Shark Week begins. I'm Dave Rimbolt. He's Cody. And this is Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs.
Hey, that's us.
Yeah, it's not quite the same without the cool music, is it?
It isn't.
Yeah. So, we're going looking for Rhapta on the east coast of Africa. What's your level of existing knowledge in your head for very old port cities, trading outposts on the coast of any part of Africa?
If we are not in Egypt, then I am lost. That is the honest truth.
In the Mediterranean, you mean? Like, yeah.
Like,
once you get to the other side of Africa, like, nope, I got nothing.
Marco
Polo?
We can talk Heart of Darkness for a little bit. Joseph Conrad, for you young fellas who might not have read Heart of Darkness yet. But yeah, no, I really do not know much about ports in Africa.
Yeah. I played a game called New Horizons, Uncharted Waters. It was made by a video game company called Koei, Koei. I think it was a Japanese company. But they also made games called Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which more people may have heard of. But they also made this game called Uncharted Waters. It was on the old Nintendo, and it was the age of exploration. You would go around on a boat, and you could trade. It was kind of open-ended. You could trade. You could be a pirate. You could do whatever you wanted.
Did you get dysentery?
No, I did not.
So it wasn't like the Oregon Trail.
At least not on purpose. Like maybe you eat some bad pizza, you stay up all night. Anything's possible. But
scurvy.
It's a fun game. If y'all heard of it, it's one of those if you know type things. And I learned all these kind of old ports, but we're talking like 1500s, not 2,000 years ago ports, Roman Empire ports, which is what we're talking about today. Some other interesting Rhapta facts that I looked up. Rhapta is from the Greek, meaning sewn, named for the sewn boats made there, sewn as in like sewing. It's a reference to the fact that the wooden planks of the boats in use in the area, mtepe in Swahili, were held together by rope rather than nails. So they were sewn together. Apparently, Rhapta was known for their ivory from rhinoceros horns and tortoise shell. What do you think you do with a tortoise shell? Is it like a bowl? Use it like as a basin?
You probably could, but I was thinking maybe medicinal purposes.
Yeah, it's a good thing PETA exists now, because we were just going hard on the using of animals back in the day. Like, to think that there was a time when we traded in tortoise shell, which are creatures that live like 200 years or something.
Or longer, yeah.
Longer? Man, that's wild to think. How did they not go extinct if tortoise shell was... It's not like they can run away.
They cannot.
They're very slow, as we've learned with such stories as the tortoise and the hare, although they're steady. Anyways, that was some of the big things you could get at the Rhapta port, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Most trusted encyclopedia this side of the Mississippi.
So Josh is going to go out to the east coast of Africa. He heads to Zanzibar.
That is a fun name to say.
Sounds like a fun restaurant owned by the same restaurant company group that ran Bennigan's. Bennigan's in Zanzibar. But it's not. It's an island off the coast of Africa, which I was not aware of. So I was aware of Tanzania.
Yeah.
That's one. And Madagascar, which is way farther south, right?
I believe so.
But this is Zanzibar. He goes to a place called Stone Town. Now, the interesting thing right away is he's walking around town. He makes reference to it. Is that like their streets aren't made in a grid-like pattern. They're just all over the place.
And I love it.
Why do you love that?
Because very rarely anything I do has any order or rhyme or reason to it. And so, like a whole town that's just mapped that way, it makes me feel better about myself.
It honestly looked like they just built a bunch of buildings that were solid and then carved their way through them in any direction they wanted to make those pathways.
Potentially.
Yeah, it was wild. But he's there. He's talking to people. He's playing dominoes. They played They had like a dominoes park.
Well, that's what you do when you're in Zanzibar.
Like place to play dominoes. He gives his first funny line of the episode. He's like, oh, I worked at Domino's, which is interesting because I worked at Domino's. Did you know that, Cody? I'm a former employee of Domino's.
I did know that. World famous Italian eatery, Domino's.
Best years of my life. Yeah, Cody, have you ever worked in the food industry?
No, I purposely avoided doing that.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
Well, I did it because I have a more refined palate.
Oh, gosh.
And I did not want to come home smelling like that food and getting burnt out on it. And so I needed to keep all the eateries I could.
Cody's the guy that goes to Mexican restaurants and gets fries with nacho cheese on them.
That is one particular Mexican restaurant. One.
A refined palate.
Yes.
It'd be great if Expedition Unknown picked up that we're potting about their episodes and then like invited us to go on an adventure with Josh. We'd go off to like India or something and to see what you would eat.
I would eat whatever is served because that's the kind of person I am, Dave.
Would you?
Yes.
You would eat anything.
That
to
is
not insult like the culture?
That is served that I'm not allergic to. I should say that.
So you go, all right, here it is. Bugs for the culture, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, it might taste like chicken.
I doubt it. Not bugs. Rat? Maybe. So he meets up with Alan Sutton, diver, explorer, and Alan is the one who has the nautical log / the old maps, which that's kind of wild to have 2,000-year-old map.
I got 3 of them just lying around my house. So
what? I got maps, man. I got all the maps. Who needs maps? I got Google Earth. So he's talking about this maps. He starts talking about Rhapta was the last trading outpost on the east side of Africa. He's speaking of it in pretty certain terms, whereas Rhapta, I can tell you from my research, is a very amorphous discussion among archaeologists and experts. There seems to be 4 main areas where people are looking for it, and only really 2 are focused on in this episode of Expedition Unknown.
And only 1 am I even believing as a possibility. So
oh yeah, we'll get to that. That was something interesting for an Expedition Unknown episode, but we'll get there. Alan explains to Josh it's 2 days south of Zanzibar according to the nautical log, so like 2 days sail.
Mm-hmm.
And legend says, of course, that it was swallowed up by the ocean. So he takes a plane, a Cessna. I have trouble calling a Cessna a plane sometimes. I know it's a plane, but
it definitely is a plane.
It's a box powered by rubber bands.
If it gets in the air, it's a plane.
Have you ever ridden in a small plane like that? You flew one, right?
I flew one, yes. And you made fun of me for flying in the air and not landing it. And I was just supposed to guide the plane to our location.
Did I make fun of you? I don't remember that.
There was some sarcastic wit.
Me and Josh have that in common. So he goes to Mafia Island. He gets on a 3-wheeled golf cart called a tuk-tuk, which that was kind of cool. Seemed like it'd be easy to roll one of those.
Honestly, I'm thinking about getting a tuk-tuk for the mean streets of Chanute where we live.
People drive all sorts of those buggy things around here. I don't even know what those are called.
Side-by-sides.
Is that what they're called?
Some of them.
I didn't even know that was the thing. But they're like, yeah, you buy them at your sport utility, not vehicles, but what do they call that? Recreational equipment.
Off-roading equipment stores.
Yeah, like the places that sell 4-wheelers and such. Now they sell these like buggy things, and people drive them all around the town.
Gators.
They're like $15,000. You can just buy a car.
Or I could buy a tuk-tuk.
I bet tuk-tuks would be significantly cheaper. So they go offshore to a remote spot out in the ocean where they just happen to have some land sticking out. You can only really see it when the tide is down. And he meets a couple of dudes out here. He meets Caesar Beta, who's an archaeologist, and Professor Felix Kami. Do you remember how he was saying that? Kami?
Close.
Chammy? Felix Champs. That's what I'm going to call him. University of Dar es Salaam. And apparently kind of a big time expert in the field of looking for Rhapta. In fact, in some of my research, I can tell you that Felix kind of stumbles upon this site that we're going to talk about here in the first part, like back in 2016. In fact, I saw an article from like 2017 with the blocks they show on the episode. We've had this discussion. Like, is it real? Is it staged? And we kind of end up in the middle. Like, some of it's real, some of it's staged. But they act like they're just finding these blocks.
Well,
Josh is. The other two are acting just not very well, because if you listen close to their reaction to finding the blocks, they're like, oh, wow, we have never seen these before.
I like to think that maybe those particular ones further out, they're like, well, we know that there's blocks, but we haven't seen block 217 before, and this is new for us.
Cody, you might be wondering, is this cynical Cody?
No,
clearly not. No. This is combative Cody. Cody who just wants to argue with me. No, it's possible. It's possible. So
I was being optimistic, Cody.
Caesar Beta is described as the world's foremost authority on Rhapta, and he knows exactly where it is.
He does.
Like, he doesn't mess around.
We almost lost Caesar, and I was worried.
Wait, what am I not remembering from the episode?
As the tide starts coming in, Caesar is down, and Josh is like, oh no, Caesar!
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So yes, we almost lost Caesar, and that would have been an expedition unknown first, I believe.
I did think it was hilarious how confident he was. He's like, no, we found it. We know exactly where it is. I haven't even heard of Rhapta before watching this episode, and I don't even know where my keys are most of the time. And this dude's like, I know exactly where it is.
So I wish they would have said, although I don't know if they would have known, like, how big is Rhapta supposed to be? Because, like, if it is the size of our small community or one of the nearby even smaller ones, like, oh, good luck finding that. That's going to be a needle in the haystack. But if it's like the size of modern day Jerusalem, then yeah, that might have been an outer wall, and further inland might be the city of Rhapta.
So I don't think they know, because it's only referenced in these old, nautical logs or whatever. They don't really know, except for that they called a metropolis. So it's probably safe to say that in their heads, they're imagining different things.
I'm envisioning the city of Chicago.
It can't be that big.
Well, that's what metropolis is.
Well, now, not 2,000 years ago. Anyways, they find this rock area, which is interesting because in that part of the world, there isn't really rock outcroppings like that in that part of the ocean. So it's an interesting anomaly. When the tide goes up, it disappears, but they find these blocks that are geometrically similar. Mm-hmm. They start measuring them, and they're, really similar, which is interesting. The tide starts rising. There doesn't seem to be any urgency. Like, they're just kind of standing there, and Josh is like, tide's rising. And then Caesar about falls in.
We almost lost him.
So they need to hurry because the tide's rising. And then they're diving. They go underneath. They find blocks beneath the surface to match the ones up top. Josh doesn't care, though, because by the end of this, he's like, I think it's just a natural formation. He does not qualify this statement. He doesn't really tell us why, other than we're led into the next story and they kind of tell us why. But you're with Josh. You agree. You concur as an expert archaeological mind.
I don't think that this portion that they're searching is either Rhapta or Rhapta Major, I guess. Like, it might be like the outskirts, and it could be a potential wall, but is it the Bimini Road? Is that what it is that's in the Caribbean?
Yeah.
Either there are actual ancient structures that are underneath the ocean, or it is quite possible that you can just have these almost rectangular shapes that have grooves every so often.
Mm-hmm. That can happen in the natural world, and has been documented.
I don't think that it's the correct area for looking for like major civilization. It's fringe at best.
We are pastors, so we know.
Yeah.
We're experts, kids. Don't try this at home.
Indeed.
I do think there is very significant evidence at the next site they go to for why they could be at the right place and these people aren't. Now, that being said, could this be something? Yes, for sure. It could be something.
I haven't ruled it out. I'm just not ruling it in.
And Cody has no archaeological experience, but, many colleges are on the horn to get him to fund him right now. So that's big. He's like, I'm not ruling it out. So he goes off to collab with other archaeologists. And this time we get a couple ladies. Bridget Buxton, professor, University of Rhode Island, underwater archaeologist, and Alexandra Ratzloff, who's an archaeologist and a pottery expert.
Alex the pothead.
Yeah, that's a nice, Josh's nice run of jokes. He has a few quick ones in order about making pot jokes.
Yes. Poor Alex. She was not ready for it.
And immediately Bridget's going hard. She's like, no, that formation out in the ocean is not Rhapta. I mean, she's just like, no. Which made me immediately think, oh, do these archaeologists go home and be like, those guys? Do you think they have bitterness between them?
It's like the movie Twister, where there's rival teams and the other team's just a bunch of idiots. And they're in it for the wrong reasons.
We don't know which ones are the idiots here.
Yet.
Or who are in it for the wrong reasons. But she goes hard right off the bat. She's like, yeah, that place you were at, Josh, not Rhapta. Archaeology wars. I'm here for that. I'd like to see more of this sort of stuff on these shows, because I feel like that's probably the majority of that probably happens a lot. And usually what we get to see on the show is everybody kind of working together and everybody collaborating. We don't get to see any of those guys are jokers.
Jabronis.
And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see kind of the real archaeological world, which we're getting a closer look at it on this show than we would ever get anyways. But as we've talked about before, it feels like sometimes it's sanitized. Something they bring up, the two lady archaeologists, that I thought was very smart. The number one way to find shipwreck, ask the local people. Yeah.
The local yokels.
Yeah, so they're going to go do more diving. They've got coordinates provided by local fishermen. I really dig this attitude, because here in Western civilization, it has really led us to thinking we're so much smarter than people in other places. But these people understand the nature of knowledge maybe a little better than we do. Like, we think we're we're like products of the Enlightenment, where we think just because we're born in a certain area of the world, we think we're just naturally smarter, but we don't really understand the nature of knowledge.
Dave, I have Google.
Well, I mean, yes, of course. If you know how to use Google, you are the smartest. That kind of works into what I'm, I know you're joking, but that's exactly what I'm talking about.
And that's why I said it.
And I love that these archaeologists were like, yeah, we're going to work with these fishermen who've probably never been out of this area in their entire lives and don't know anything about the rest of the world, but they know about here and they know the stories.
And they know these waters.
So they go diving. There's eels.
Ew.
Why there's always some crazy creatures?
Eels are gross.
Yeah, they are. No, thank you. No, thanks. And Josh is going right down there by the bottom. Like, hey, just, don't stick your hand anywhere, Josh. And Josh is like, let me see what happens when I stick my hand in here.
Don't do it.
And he almost gets his hand taken off, or at least that's what I imagined was going to happen.
He's going to have a painful bite.
I noticed that this is a really healthy looking reef. They talk about it on the show. We learned from past episodes that healthy underwater ecosystems usually spring up around shipwrecks.
This is true. Also, we see other aquatic life. And my favorite aquatic life, whale sharks.
Why are whale sharks your favorite?
Because they're gigantic.
They're gentle giants.
They are. And like when you think sharks, you think, oh, it's going to eat me and it's going to chew me up in little pieces. Nope, not these guys.
Not Mr. Whale Shark. He's not interested. He's vegetarian.
Pretty much.
No, I don't know that that's true.
No, they eat plankton.
Oh, it is true.
Yeah.
They eat plankton. Seaweed?
I'm pretty sure they filter feed.
That's not a balanced diet.
It's not, but it is what it is. And if I knew anything about the ocean, I would tell you, and the sea, I would tell you, maybe this is the fish that swallowed Jonah, but I can't tell you for certain that there are whale sharks in that part of the world. So,
yeah. She says they got to hurry. They're always got to hurry. The time's always limited. In this case, it's like the currents are about to change, Josh. We've got to really hustle. And I thought, is that something currents do? Does currents change? I just thought currents were currents.
I wonder if the tide affects kind of the momentum of some currents in different areas.
Yeah. Granted, I know nothing about the oceans.
Living smack dab in the middle of the continental United States shockingly does not lend you a lot of oceanic knowledge.
Yeah. If I'm down there diving with him and she says, well, we got to hustle because the currents are about to change. I'm like, okay, let's go up. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go up. We don't want to take any chances. I'm already uncomfortable because I don't want to be down here.
Like, are we not tethered? That's my question. I want to be tethered to something.
Yeah, why aren't they tethered?
So I can get back.
Maybe they are, but they don't want to tell us that because that would take the adventure out of it for the viewer.
Or they're going really far away and they don't want to get all knotted up.
They find ceramics, pottery, as luck would have it, since they're with a pottery expert. And they find ballast stones, which were used in ships 2,000 years ago. Ships were made out of wood. So there's not really going to be anything left of these wrecks. So when they find the stones and the ceramics, they figure, well, this was probably a shipwreck. There's something I noticed in this whole segment, and maybe it was because he was with women, so it made it more noticeable to me. I was kind of cringing, Josh barking out orders. And then I realized, oh, he does this all the time. He joins someone else's crew and he's always like, do this, do that. Oh, we got to get that. Get this. We got to get up. We got to go. We got to go. You know, like, is that weird? He's joining with someone else's team and he's barking out all the orders. I don't know. I just got a chuckle out of it.
So part of it, I think, is because it lends kind of narration for us, the listener, our viewer. And so like him saying it just adds a little extra emphasis to that being a point, even if it's not necessary that he says it or that he's repeating it from someone else, but it makes it like expedition unknown seal of approval, and it's a narration tool.
We really need a behind the scenes because I want to know how all this works.
Josh, if you're listening after how many ever episodes in we are, you can come on the show.
He's not listening. But if anyone knows Josh and you happen to listen to this podcast, you might give him a heads up like, hey, these guys are the only ones doing a podcast episode by episode watch. And we think you should invite them to document and be behind the scenes with you. We don't even have to be on the show. We're not going to turn it down. If you want to put us on the show, we'll gladly be on the show. They bring the piece of pottery up. They examine it. It's post-medieval. Bummer.
Happens to the best of us, really.
Not nearly old enough. They're looking for a bigger site. They need more. So, again, the metropolitan area says to them that this is not big enough. So they take Josh to a place called Ras Kismani, westernmost peninsula of Mafia Island. Now, this part was my favorite part of the episode, Cody. Josh is practically tripping over pottery in the shallows. It's just everywhere.
Oh, Lady Gaga would be so proud of Josh.
What? I don't get the reference.
Shallows?
Oh, is that her song of hers? I'm old, Cody.
That she did with Bradley Cooper.
Oh, yeah, from that movie. Right. This part reminded me of, back in 2019, I went to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tour a lot of cool sites. One of them was Shiloh, or Shiloh, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
I'm American, so it's Shiloh, yes.
All right, well, we can call it Shiloh just for you. And it was really cool because Israel's got a lot of hills in certain areas, and they always look archaeologically for these kind of places where hills would surround kind of a valley, right? And they would make natural amphitheaters, essentially, where people's voice speaking in the valley would carry up the hills. And we're in this area, and they had an area where they thought that the tabernacle was, and they had the fake, the demonstration tabernacle set up out there. And they said, as we were walking around, they said, the reason we think it was there is because look down. And we're like, oh. And we look down and we see all these little shards of what was pottery. And he's like, yeah, pick one up, put it in your pocket, take it home with you. There's literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of these shards of pottery on all these hills around. And it's because they would come to the tabernacle for certain feasts. And then for some of the feasts, and forgive me, I'm not an expert, so I don't know which ones, but they would only use those plates once. You couldn't reuse them because of whatever food was on them. So they would break the plates at the end. And so literally these hills all around were covered with pottery. It was like gravel on the ground. And that's how they thought they knew where the tabernacle was, because they said the only place we didn't find pottery was right down there in that valley.
I will say, if this was a national forest park, your guide would have been convincing a ton of people to break the law. You can't take stuff.
Yeah, well, apparently you can take stuff in other places, especially when it's just that, tons of it. And this is the feeling I got when I was watching them, and they're finding all this pottery on it. And that is the signifier of, like, yes, hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of people over time have been in this spot. And there's evidence of it. And so this was really cool. They find a stone anchor, which is strong evidence of a harbor. They get really excited about that. They find a coin, because of course they did.
They find Chinese pottery.
Yeah, that was amazing too.
And I'm like, you are a long way from home, Chinese pottery.
It sure seems to signify that this was a trading outpost. Josh is yelling, of course, through all of this, Bridget, come here, Bridget. Kenny's barking out orders. And I don't know why. It just stood out to me more because they were women. And I'm like, this is kind of a bad look.
He does it all the time. So he's at least being an equal opportunity yeller.
He says, I keep picking up things that are awesome. And I was like, yeah, that's a good description. That beach was awesome. And I found myself, I just wish I could go there and explore and pick up stuff and look at it. Did you feel the same way?
I was with him at the very end, where it's like, well, thank you for letting me keep some souvenirs for my travel.
Well, of course, yeah, we would take it all home. But they're finding like real pottery with like pictures on them and stuff, which was really cool. It reminded me when I was a kid, my grandparents had a farm out in the country. So, as one does here in Kansas.
Yeah.
And there was a creek that ran through part of their land, and we could go down there, and there was always a ton of fossils. So when there hadn't been a lot of rain in a while, that it would dry up and you'd be able to explore the creek bed, and there were just fossils everywhere. You could just find them. And that's kind of the feeling I got when at the place he was at, was just like, yeah, you're just finding stuff. And that feeling, if you've ever felt that, is an amazing feeling.
/ they do find not fossils, but seashells.
Yes. Well, so that's the biggest one. And again, something I learned. I'd have never known this. So they find like a little tower thing, and it has a shell line in it. Now, what's important about that, they explain, is that the shell line indicates a tsunami. A tsunami would come through and deposit this sea life into this layer of sediment. And of course, if you dig down into the earth, you have layers. That's how geology and archaeology kind of work together. And you can kind of figure out what happened at these times. And so that's probably what happened to Rhapta, is it got destroyed by a tsunami.
That's what I'm choosing to believe.
And he leaves with the question, are we standing in Rhapta? And in Expedition Unknown fashion, maybe.
Honestly, either tsunami or something catastrophically huge happened there, or we have way, way different definitions of metropolis.
Yeah, east coast of Africa especially, prone to, it's a earthquake area. Mm-hmm. So tsunami certainly fits. Okay. Best Josh quotes of the episode. You have one.
Aquaman gets a sequel. Why can't I?
That one was very good. I had that one in my notes as well. That was hilarious.
I LOL'd.
And a very good point. Did we need an Aquaman sequel? No.
Some people say it's better than the first.
Good for Jason Momoa. Another one I liked. If this is the Amazon fulfillment center of the ancient world, where are all the boxes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When talking about Atlantis, that it's a killer resort in the Bahamas.
That one was good too. Hosts a late November college basketball tournament in a hotel.
As any sunken city would do.
And possibly my favorite, which I am now going to be using nonstop, came in the little interlude when they came back from commercial where he's trying some of the local food. And the guy says, Hakuna Matata. He says, Hakuna Matasty. And I'm like, yep, that's my favorite. And I'm using that nonstop.
So would you eat Zanzibar pizza?
Absolutely. It had lobster on it? Is that what it had?
Yes. I don't know if I would have gone shellfish on my za just because, I feel those are two different things. But I would try it.
Yeah, lobster, crab, though. I think it's kind of a do-everything meat. You can have it on anything. Surely it was just the meat, right? They weren't putting, he didn't have to, take the lobster off the pizza to crack it.
Hopefully not.
Actually, I love this episode. I thought I was way more into it than last week's episode. It's not that I have a deep disrespect for the flying machinery of World War II. I yearn for the older stuff.
It felt short.
This one?
Yes, it flew by.
Yeah, but I think that has to do with it's streamlined and it's pretty action packed as far as, I don't know. It was way more interesting to me. It seemed more clear cut what they were looking for. I definitely dug the archaeological clashing going on. I want to see more stuff like that. I like this episode. What did you guys think about Expedition Unknown, Season 13, Episode 5, The Search for Rhapta? Let us know in the comments below the social media posts for this episode. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and review us. Share the pod as much as you can to all of your Expedition Unknown fans. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on next week's adventure.